It's hot in here. Oh, I got the fan on. I got my spray bottle. This is our air conditioning. But I did realize at one point, just now, I just realized, I probably am telling people not to be afraid of death all the time. As if I know what that's like. And the reason I'm telling people not to be afraid of death all the time is if I know what that's like, is because I do. I died for a little while. In 1992, I think it was, I was on an operating table. And I was having an abortion that turned out to be twins and not just one baby, which is why they misdiagnosed me as being 15 weeks pregnant when I was actually only 9 weeks pregnant. And that's why the induced miscarriage didn't work, when they were sticking bamboo twigs up into my fucking cervix and sending me to my pain threshold, because that was my pain threshold, and I stepped over it. And then I barfed all over the fucking nurses walking down the hall. They're like, what is wrong with you? Why won't this work? They were so irritated with me. And they did the ultrasound, and they were like, oh shit. And that's when they saw they turned the screen away from me quickly, but I caught a little bit of a glimpse. So that it was two heads that were inordinately close to each other. It probably joined from all the acid I did when I was in the 80s or whatever. Which is why I have this tattoo of the two little babies on my womb. Because for a long time I was like really couldn't forgive myself for that, just because, several reasons. But turns out it's the best thing for them that I could have done, because I was only 22 and I would have been the worst fucking mom. Oh my god, I would have done all the same things to my own kids that were done to me. I would have had no patience. I would have had a horrible temper. I probably would have fucking hit them, knowing myself, knowing my short temper in my 20s. Like, I couldn't even have a pet, because if it was irritating me, I would just not be able to control my temper. I mean, it was like it wasn't even me. There was one time when I got mad at this kitten that my boyfriend gave me. Never give your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend's animals. You have to choose your own animal, because he loved that cat, gave it to me, and I was like, you love this cat. I don't love this cat. This isn't my cat. This cat didn't come to me. This cat came to you. Like, you keep the cat. But he wanted me to have the cat, and I was like, I don't want this cat. Don't give me this cat. And it was just a kitten at the time, and I was trying to mix down something on the board, and the kitten kept crawling all over the board, and I was like putting him in my lap and trying to pet him at the same time as mixing with this hand. And the kitten was not having it. It was like, no, you need to put both of your hands and your eyeballs on me. And I was just not in the mood, and I lost my temper, and I pushed the cat off the mixing board, and then I was like, oh my god, what did I just do? And I stood up to go pick up the cat. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I saw my father, and I was like, oh shit. It was horrible. Started bawling my eyes out. Felt so bad for that cat. I hugged it a lot. Gave it back to my ex-boyfriend. I was like, "This is your cat. You love this cat. You keep this cat. I can't be with this cat. I can't take care of an animal." Because when you're in post-trauma, when you're healing from post-traumatic stress, I don't remember where I read this, but the advice was, stop having relationships with people. First of all, number one, stop having relationships, especially intimate, sexual, whatever, with people. Get a plant. Keep the plant alive for 5 years by watering it. That, believe it or not, took me more than 5 years. I had to do that 2 or 3 times, because there were a couple times I left town and had somebody else take care of my plants for me, and they clearly didn't know how to take care of a plant, so the plant died. So then I had to start my whole 5-year period over again, start over and take care of a new plant. So then I kept the plant alive for 5 years, put it in the front of my truck, actually, and it went crazy. It was growing all over the front of the cab. All this jasmine was growing all over the inside of the front. So cool. But then winter came, and that was at the end of my 5-year period, and that's when I found Sadie that spring. And so I've had Sadie now for 6 years. And they say you keep plant alive for 5 years, then you have a pet. You keep the pet alive for 5 years, and then after 5 years of nurturing a plant and a pet, you're allowed to have relationships with people again. So now I'm at the borderline of being allowed to have relationships with people again, because I haven't had any relationships with people, intimate or otherwise, really. I've spent a lot of time alone for, 11 years, and I'm not ready. Nope. I like plants and animals. People worry me. Not so much now, because I don't take what they do or say personally. I have a little bit more of a I wear more of a coat nowadays, so it doesn't affect me like it used to. The things that they do and say, because I recognize that most of it's just projection anyway, and I've learned that well enough to have like a buffer zone of energy instead of drugs. Drugs used to be my buffer zone between people, but now I can do that with energy, because it's basically the same thing. If you really think about it. But yeah, I did die. So just so you know, I did die. It was awesome. Fucking amazing. It was the most beautiful experience of my entire life, was dying. Quite ironic, wouldn't you say? Yes, it was beautiful. And yes, I met someone. They were androgynous. They were a different color. They told me I had a choice. I made the choice. So if you go back, you have a lot of work to do. Came back, and I've been doing a lot of work. By telling everybody, don't be scared of death. In fact, during the rougher times of post-dying, I've often thought, just be so easy to step out. But yeah, I've always been a little bit cautious, because I didn't want to get stuck, like in some weird loop, like all the people that I find stuck in loops, or just stuck on the earthbound. That's got to be no fun. I mean, I already went through an entire life as a human being, not being listened to and being ignored. So to be a ghost, which is why I was pretty convinced I was a ghost most of my life. I was like, I don't even exist. I'm already dead. I think that's probably why it made it so easy for me to do like lucid dreaming on a regular basis, because that kind of shift with reality. Like I would always, like whenever I see this certain animal or symbols that in my dreams make me go, hey, am I dreaming right now? If I see them, I ask myself that when I see them in real life, so that in the dream, when I see them, I ask that in the dream, and then that's what wakes me up in the dream. Sometimes, if it's not a nightmare, I'll just see something, and I'll be like, oh, wait, I'm dreaming right now. And then I go fly around, talk to people, get advice on shit. It's pretty cool. One time I met an archetype. I'll tell you this, you're going to love this witchy woo-woo bullshit right here. Because this is some serious cool shit. I was like, what? I met an archetype that I could physically describe to another person who had a lucid dream, who I only met once in my life, and we were having a conversation about lucid dreams in San Francisco a few months after I'd had this dream, and I described this woman that I met, who was holding this giant book, which was basically my Akashic records, because as I discovered them later, it was that book. That was the book she was holding and giving to me. When I described this woman to this guy who was also having lucid dreams, he described the exact same woman. It's like back in the good old days in Alabama in high school in the 80s, with me and my skinhead friends used to take lots of acid and go up into the woods, and then we'd see like a fucking bull standing in the middle of a path on the top of a mountain and be like, you see that too, right? In the middle of the night. Just a bull standing on the path on a mountain. Like, you see that, right? This is an animal that's right there. And then we all go, yes, we all see this. We all have to walk around through the thickets to go around the bull. Weird shit like that, like the chickens, you know what I mean? Like chickens everywhere. There's just tons of chickens. It's a very Werner Herzog kind of consciousness. I love him. Werner Herzog. Dear Werner Herzog, I'd like to say to you an open letter. When Trump was first elected, and I projectile vomited out the back of my truck here that day, I just felt sick, and then I heard, what? And I was like, uh-oh. It's going to be another Reagan era, is it? Yeah. Well, Werner Herzog came on and he said, He said this quote. He said, know that you can endure the almost unendurable. And I love that quote. And then he proceeded to talk about the Reagan era, and then he talked about the Bush years, which were also equally dark and horrible. And I was so high on drugs all the time. And I swear the only thing that kept me from not offing myself during the entire Bush era that was, clearly, and now that doesn't even seem so bad in comparison. But the only thing that kept me from offing myself during the whole Dick Cheney presidential session, since he really was the president, was I just kept telling myself, I'm not going to off myself without taking those motherfuckers with me. And I never did, of course. So that's what kept me alive, was the fact that I didn't want to waste my death just on myself. I wanted to, if I was going to go, I wanted it to be worthy. And since I don't have all that rage inside me now, surveillance team, I don't really, although I do just for fun like to visualize what a huge relief it's going to be when a heart attack happens to a certain person who thinks he controls the entire universe. Just, imagining the feeling of that person being gone. Not a threat anymore. Just imagining the feeling of that person not being a threat to your entire way of life, or, especially during this whole pandemic thing, and that there isn't going to be anybody that raises up and to take the place of that thing, that maybe everybody just settle down. Just maybe everybody could just settle down. Stop shooting things. And when I was telling you guys about that global meditation for peace, when the whole Ukraine thing first started, there's a website in Russia that actually tracks the Schumann resonance of the planet. And during that first initial global meditation thing, the resonance of the whole planet just spiked, and it's been spiking. A lot of people have been doing different global meditations for peace, and it's been spiking it was like the best party I ever went to. Because it literally felt like, oh my god, we were in the biggest, most ginormous festival stadium that exists, and that was the whole planet. And the planet was reacting to us being there, watching the show, and just sending it peace and all. It was the coolest feeling ever. It was so cool that I was like, I need to do drugs right now afterwards, because I was just like, oh my god, that was too cool. I need to settle down, become human again. So, yeah, I ended up getting really high afterwards, but whatever. Do what you gotta do. You do what you gotta do to fucking cope, yo. And if you do end up living a good life, the theory is that Diana Artemis, what's her other name? She's got a million names. Athena will grant you the gift of a quick and painless death. So that's how you know you did a good job, if you just go and you're gone. So I think that's why it was so easy for me to help that dude that got in that car accident last weekend over in Berkeley, when I was parked underneath the overpass where that accident happened. And I knew he died instantly, because it wasn't a screech, crunch, it was a crunch and then screech, which meant somebody just fucking jackknifed the cop car, basically, just went straight in. And then whoever was behind him was screeching. So, that's... Given the way they make marshmallow metal these days, it's kind of like squish, I've had so many people run into me in this truck, and their entire front end is just squashed in, and I don't even have a dent on me, because I'm made of, actual steel that they used to have back in the 90s. Unlike this marshmallow metal they make now. So, wow, this is a really stream of conscience. So, yeah, I died. And it was beautiful. So don't worry. It's all right. It's not a bad place to be. People who say they've been to hell, I'm fairly convinced that's a human structure. It's like that guy that was over at Massacre Flats wearing the hat, where all that dread feeling happened just recently up there by the Sacramento River, who killed those 900 people, or was the general telling those guys to kill 900 people? Like, his guilt is where his hell is. His own guilt. It's like the emotion, the darkest emotions you can have. They're what is creating your own hell. It's not necessarily like something that's being lorded over you, because really you have free will and you make those decisions yourself, whether you make them consciously or not. A lot of people probably don't want to hear that because it kind of scares them to think that they're actually, you know, don't push too much power in people's own hands to think that they're in control of their own lives. Sometimes they like being a victim, but that's also part of the archetype thing, is that you're always one archetype or another. Like, and if you look at all the archetypes, and there's so many millions of them, if you see your personality traits as an archetypal characterization, it's easier to step back from them and be a witness to yourself. So you just got to witness your shit, step back and witness it, and then you don't like get all involved in it, and then you realize, oh, it is just like an illusion. You know, it's kind of sad, really. That whole theory of all of life being just like a video game or a simulation, you know, and you're just playing this fucking game and it's all just a play. At first, that really fucking pissed me off. Like, put me through all that fucking shit just to play a video game? and then I'm like, well, I was the one who was taking it all super serious, so... But how else are you supposed to... I hear you fucking in the middle of some guy punching you in the face that you thought loved you is now, like, drinking all of your food stamps away. Eating all your food stamps, drinking all your unemployment checks away. And you're like, I thought you loved me. Yeah. And the only reason I was with that guy was because 15 years prior, when I first met him, I had the biggest crush on the guy. But, you know, he was unavailable, which is why I had a big crush on him, because he was safe. He would never date me, right? Because I was a total stoner. I never talked, you know, I was always too shy talking to people. I was always, like, hiding in the background or whatever. But there was one night, we were at a party together. There was a bunch of people there. And I went outside, and I got stoned because I couldn't deal with people at the party, which is why I went to parties, because to run away from people, because I couldn't deal. But I always thought I had to be at the party, you know, like that's what you do in your 20s. You go to parties, and then I'd sit on the back stairs usually, or on the front stairs away from all the people, because I was just like, so, like, I couldn't deal with people. So, but one night I went outside, I got really stoned. He came outside, he was getting on his motorcycle, and right before that, I was looking up at the moon, and I was just having one of those moments where it's almost like somebody else just walked in and with you, or a bunch of people just walked into the area that you are all of a sudden. It's like a bunch of witnesses happened. And I was like, fuck, I'm going to remember this night forever. So I took a picture of the moon. It was like a random picture. I was like, I just know I'm going to remember this moment for a really long time, and I have no idea why. So then a few seconds later, I turn around and I see that guy getting on his motorcycle, and I'm like instantly hearing, stop him from getting on the motorcycle because he's going to get into a wreck. So I was like, okay, I'm super stoned. So I went over there and I was like, dude, don't ride your motorcycle right now. You're going to get into a wreck. He's like, super drunk, get the fuck out of my way, bitch. I'll go where the fuck I want. He's like revving it up, and I'm standing in front of the motor. Don't leave yet. You're going to get into a wreck. Don't leave. Get out the fuck away. Get out the fuck away, bitch. And he finally just shoves me aside, takes off on his motorcycle, goes up a hill, and gets hit by a car. And ends up in the hospital, dies a few times, comes back super pissed because he was happy being dead. He wanted to be dead. Kept coming back, ripping out all this fucking shit. I don't want to fucking be here, god damn it. You know, a super angry person. So I sat by his fucking bedside the whole time he was in the hospital, because I was like, I felt he had no family or anything. Nobody else was there. And I just felt so guilty, because I felt like it was my fault for stopping him. Like, if I hadn't have tried to stop him, would he have still gotten into the wreck? if I would have not tried to stop him, he would have taken off normal speed and not gotten into a wreck. And the fact that I was trying to stop him is what made him go faster. But it was, I mean, the fucked up thing was, it wasn't even his fault. The other guy ran the stoplight and ran into him. He had the right of way. So, I don't know. But I looked at that every fucking possible way and was like, making myself feel like shit about it for years. Like, I shouldn't have said anything. Like, and there's been other times since then when I've gotten impressions of things happening that are going to happen to people and I won't tell them because I'm like, the act of me telling them puts it in their field and then maybe it does happen, you know? So I hate that shit. I am so not into premonitions at all. Like, I really, no, that one can just go hang out somewhere else. I don't want to know that. Like, only in terms of my own life, I'm like, okay with that. But when it comes to other people, I don't want to have that kind of I don't want to have that kind of knowledge that something's going to happen to somebody. I mean, I know everybody's going to die, but, you know, whatever. That's not, like, super specific. So that really fucking bugged me about that guy. And that's why I spent so much time in the hospital while he was recovering. And then after he got better, I didn't see him for another 15 years at all. We lived in the same town. I never saw the guy again. Super weird. But then all of a sudden, 2010, when I lost my job, got laid off from Amoeba, lost all my friends, no one to talk to me anymore because I was not working there anymore. And I was a fucking miserable, drug-addled mess at the time, you know, because I just lost the happiest period of my life is now over and everything smelled like death. And then I see that guy at the fucking bar down the street where I was working as a waitress briefly until the chef tried to fuck me. And I was like, dude, no. So, anyway, 49 jobs, been sexually harassed at 49 of them. That's why I'm not in a big rush to go get another job, doofus. So yeah, I met that guy again, and then I was like, oh, this is so weird that I'm meeting you now. Where have you been? He's like, oh, I've been around. I'm like, well, you know, that's weird that I would suddenly see him all of a sudden. And then, after, you know, a horrible attempt at having a relationship for the first time in years, he moved into my house, basically, and then wouldn't leave my house. He was a locksmith, owned a gun, and was beating the shit out of me because he was so angry at himself for being gay, secretly gay, San Francisco, whatever. And I just was trying to help him, like, be himself. I kind of gave up the whole idea of being his girlfriend. I was like, because he had 9 dead ex-girlfriends. 9 dead ex-girlfriends. Every single, of all 9 of them, he said he was proudly admitting to, with a smile, had convinced all of them to kill themselves, like, and was happy about that. That's the kind of psychosis we're talking about here. And that's just when he was drunk. I'm not even going to go into what he was like when he was high. Fuck me, dude. That's why I disconnected from the whole idea of being in a relationship with this person. At this point, it was more like, I'm just going to try to help this guy, like, maybe find some kind of a thread through music or something that he loves that will just, like, ground the fuck out of him, because otherwise, this person is a danger to society. And right now, he's just a danger to me, because I was receiving all the abuse. And then as soon as the abuse would be over, right, like the next morning when he'd sober up for 10 minutes before he started guzzling whiskey again, because that's generally what he did, was he started guzzling whiskey at 10 a.m. and then just went until it was done. But as soon as it was over, he would be begging me to hit him. He wanted me to hit him so bad. He wanted me to, like, leave marks on his body so that he could then go and tell everybody I was beating him up. Because whenever he would, like, attack me, it would usually be choking, which most abusive guys know that's your throat is probably the hardest thing to actually leave serious marks on until you are actually dead. And I've dealt with abusive boyfriends enough, and the cops, and, you know, restraining orders and all that shit. And I've gotten the same response every fucking time. Well, you let the guy into your house, and it's kind of can't really do anything until he does actually kill you. That's the response I'm used to getting from any kind of domestic violence situation. So clearly the only way to get out of that scenario was going to be of my own accord. So I just basically, knowing as much as I knew in my 40s about how most of those relationships end, I knew I could not kick him out, because if I kicked him out, he, being a locksmith with a gun, would break into my house and shoot me in the face. So the best way for me to get rid of the guy was to just wait for him to cheat on me, find someone else to go live with, and then he would choose to leave of his own accord, because I would be doing anything except waiting for him to leave. Because you feed the fire, you're just going to get fire in the face, you know? And, a lot of people kept, like, not believing me. Well, then why do you keep letting him in? I'm like, you clearly have never been in any kind of abusive scenario. You have no idea what it's like. This is like a chess game we're playing here. It's a fucking chess game. Like, I can't seem to be the victor over this extremely dominant male who's secretly gay and hates himself, but strong enough to kill me at any given time and point, you know. Just choke me out at any time if you wanted. I had fucking fractured ribs for, like, I couldn't even take a full breath for like a full 6 months, at least. You know, it was that bad. But no marks, no distinguishing black eyes. You know, very smart. Like, seems like he's totally fucking drunk, but then for some reason he can destroy this object over here and then leave that object just pristine. That was right in the middle of where all those objects were. So it wasn't really a frenzy so much as it was a planned, coordinated, fucking psychotic fucking attack. You know, the kind of person who, I went to a show with him in Oakland once, and they were coming back over the bridge, and I was like, oh, let me give you some money for gas, and I had like $5 in my pocket, and he goes, no, just pretend you're broke. I was like, what? And he pulls out this wad of 50s in his pocket. He's like, just pretend you're broke. Puts a wad. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing with it? You know, sociopath, psychopath, whatever you want to call him. That it's the shift that happens when a teenager or when a child has been abused enough. At some point, there's a split in their growing up where they either go, I'm gonna make the world pay for everything that fucking happened to me, and they go off on this like tangent where it's like they will just they'll make you. That's like the victim. They take the victim stance. That's the victim archetype. Then it's also the saboteur archetype. Well, they just do whatever the fuck they can to get whatever the hell they can out of everybody. They don't give a fuck about anybody, really. They really don't have the capacity to love anyone, ever. And then there's the martyr archetype, which is what I was on. I'll just lay under the bus and let everybody walk all over me and give a fuck. It's also a form of victim, but it's like, it's a split. Like, they're both victims, but that's what the trauma does to the children. And that's why we are the ones that are homeless, you know, because we're all out here on the street, you know, because we can't just go, I'm a successful blah, blah, blah. And we're not well adjusted to people. We don't trust anyone, you know, because we're split open from the trauma at an early age. Usually most often by sexual trauma, because that's the one trauma that's so less talked about. And it's much more insidious than physical trauma, because physical trauma leaves marks. And anyone who's been sexually traumatized versus physically traumatized will agree with this when they say they would rather be physically traumatized than sexually traumatized, because physical trauma leaves marks and sexual trauma does not. These are all bullet holes that don't show. You know, so it's like you're left with this fucking weight that is not apparent to anyone else except another person who's been sexually traumatized. And also, when somebody is physically harming you, they're angry or they're in physical pain when they're physically harming you. But when they're sexually harming you, you're in pain and they're in pleasure. And that causes a weird, like, oh, like, how can you enjoy me hurting like this? Like, the enjoyment on your face is almost bigger the more in pain I am. So because of that, it's like the trust issues are, it's like a Medusa head at that point, you know? So yeah, not having relationships for a long time when you're healing it and having pets instead, all that shit. So I've been doing all that. Now I'm fine. But I'm not going to get in a relationship anytime soon, because I don't want to. Number one. Number two, I don't know. I like being on my own sometimes, you know. I don't mind having friends, but I'm not gonna, you know, I don't know, whatever. Why did I get on this subject? Oh yeah, I died. Yeah, I died. So I'm a 2.0. There's a lot of us around, people that have died and then come back. It's a beautiful thing. Don't worry about it. Okay? It's just the process of getting there, I think, is what most people worry about. Hoping it's not too painful. So, since we are in the midst of, like, the mass extinction, obviously, and it's so hot, and it's only going to get hotter, and renters are freaking out because landlords are increasing all the rents, and there's just, like, all the people that Karen does homeless people are now going to be homeless themselves, which means maybe they'll learn how to gain some compassion or something, but who cares? They're going to be homeless, and they'll be like, well, now I'm homeless. I have all the compassion in the world now that I'm homeless too. Yeah, join the club. Yeah. So, yeah. I have nothing else to say about that. It's all like a movie we've all seen before, you know? So just imagine the relief you're going to feel when certain Nazi pedophiles are no longer in your face. However, keep in mind that Nazis and pedophiles, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. They really are. They really are everywhere. So, don't be surprised if, like, you meet another one again. But, that's why death is a gift, dude. Like, I just can't, I'm really looking forward to the day I don't have to deal with Nazis and pedophiles anymore. And that is all I want to say about that. Okay, thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice day. I hope it's not too terribly 106 degrees where you are. Whoa! Squish.